And the backer boards make it really, really easy to use counterweights if you want to do that. I've never used a counterweight in a turning before, but I decided to try it on this one, and it helped. I don't have any actual weights. I just screwed had a block of elm. It was sort of kind of heavy, and screwed it onto the lightweight side. Of course, then I have this big extra chunk of wood flying around. That made me kind of nervous, but it helped. I was able to speed it up a bit. So, first time I did one of these, where'd my strips go? Here they are. I dropped this box when getting it out of the back of my car here tonight. And it's a collection of little wooden strips that I was going to impress you with how nicely they were organized. That makes the third time I've dropped this box. And so I am reconsidering how I do this. So what we're wanting to do is build wedges, one teeny piece at a time. That's not a good example for that. So each one of these wedges, I've got, what, 5, 6 on this one, is made up of many little strips of wood, which all have to be put in individually. And no, there is no other way. At least I'm fairly certain there is no other way. I generate these strips by cutting angled pieces of remarkably cheap pine. Take it to the bandsaw and just start cutting. I believe these things are like 3/16 of an inch. Really doesn't matter. They don't even need to be consistent. What we're doing is approximating. Anybody here take calculus? Yeah. All right. We're going to be approximating the area under a curve. Right? My wife's a math professor, so I have to say these things. And the thinner you get these strips under here, the more accurately you're representing that curve. I figure if I go much thinner than 3/16, I mean, it's pretty cheap pine, they're going to start snapping on me while I'm working on them. So, before you start gluing one of these on, you need to acquaint yourself with the contours of the burl, especially the low points. This will have an effect on the design. It'll have an effect of where you place the burl on the backer board. If you're wanting to do a nice deep bowl in the center, or more or less the center, then you really don't want any valleys that are going to make holes when you start turning this. Now, if you want the nice artistic look, you don't mind a few holes in there, that's fine. Just be aware that it's going to happen. Don't let it catch you by surprise. And if you've got a deep valley in there that you think you might cut into, don't glue a strip in there. Because then you'll cut through and you start cutting away your support while it's spinning. And I've never had one of these come off. But I have cut through some supports before. Question? Yes. Yeah, I was trying to make the point that there's a real firing line here. And if a 5-pound rock covered in nails comes at your face, it's going to hurt. So these things can sometimes have bark inclusions inside them. I have heard that. I've never actually come across one. I've seen them on the outside. I haven't come across one on the inside. But those can also surprise you when you come across, because the bark inclusions are always far softer. Being burls, if you're into nice long shavings flying off when you're turning something, this is not a project for you at all. All you're going to get off of one of these is crumbs and dust. So dust protection is a very good idea. Grain direction on these is totally random. And so when you're trying to go in with a bowl gouge, or when you're scraping, the direction you're going makes no difference whatsoever. It always will cut the same way. So as I said, how you position one of these burls on the backer board is important. If you're trying to minimize vibration, then you're going to want to try to mount it close to the center of mass. But if you have one, like I gave it away. I don't have it. If you have one with the larger amount of mass is towards the side, and that's where you want to put your bowl, then your lathe is going to be dancing for a while. Just be aware of that. There's going to be a lot of shaking, and and the only thing holding it on is hot melt glue. If there's a lot of valleys in it, I had one that was actually quite wide, but the maximum thickness was about like this throughout the whole thing. So rather than do a deep bowl, I just did a gentle curve in and out. It came out looking really nice. And I gave that one away too. Okay, so we talked about counterweights. Those can help. Another positioning issue. This one especially gave me fits in several areas, but I really like how it came out. I was concerned about the crack, but it only went this far. It had a very thin, no, this one did not. This one had a chainsaw slice across here. They normally don't do that, but sometimes you get one that does. And what you can do, if you want to get rid of that and restore the natural face, you can mount it on the board at a slight angle. So that when you true it up, this gets cut away. But I got a thin spot here that's less than 1/4 of an inch. And had I done that, this whole area would have flown off. So what I elected to do instead was sand that and go ahead and put a finish on it, and then when I mount it in the stand, that's the edge I put down.
You said you had a crack in that one.
Yep.
Did you fill the crack with epoxy before you turn it off?
No, I don't bother. These things are so hard. I've never had one come apart. In fact, a crack like that is actually quite unusual. But no, I wasn't worried about it. Well, initially, but once I realized it only went that far, then I didn't care. So, Tim Yoder has a YouTube video where he turns some Australian Burls. And he has a good method for finding the center of mass for one of these things. Drum sander, blunt tip. You don't want a sharp tip. Let's see how well I can do this in a demo. And you can find, usually, oh, that's not helping. Oh, that's much better. You can find the center of mass. So then I make a pencil mark there, and no, it's not going to be real precise, but it's a pretty good idea. That if I want to minimize the vibration, and about the only way you can do this is by eye. You got your pencil mark, you got the dimple in your backer board from making it round, and say, that's pretty good. It's not going to be exact. And even if you think you have it exact, it won't be exact, trust me. And when you spin it up, it's going to start to shake. But this is a good way of minimizing, not eliminating, but minimizing the vibration that you're going to get. Yeah, for most of them, you won't get lucky enough to have the high point be in the center of the burl. This one is close, but not quite. So for the first couple of these I would sand each one of these little strips to make them custom fit. So I had I have a stationary disc sander, and next to the disc sander I've got my thickness planer. The thickness planer provided a really good working height for me to assemble these, so I don't have to stoop over all the time while I'm gluing one of these up. So when the time came to take this show on the road, I had figuring out the disc sander, that's a piece of cake. But figuring out a work platform, I had to get a little creative. So this guy in the club is a machinist. Years ago, we had a meeting at his shop, and he offered me this. I didn't know what it was, but it spins nicely. It's a bearing for something, and it has two independently moving rings on the inside of it. He asked if I wanted it. I had not the slightest clue what I was going to do with it, but you know, he triggered my inner desire to collect as much of anything as I could. And so this was in my shop for probably close to 10 years before I decided, you know, it'd be really nice to have a spinning platform to do these on. And it'd be really nice if there were a groove in here so we could sit on top of my bucket. It'd be nice if I raised this part of it so that if I already had a faceplate screwed on there, it could just drop inside. So, don't miss an opportunity to over-engineer something, but this worked out really nicely.